All right. Today we're going to be looking at the Greatwood world record run for Final Fantasy 16 PC, set by yours truly, although I had considerably less hair when I did this. Um, I'm hoping this can help anyone else that wants to run the game figure out why strats are used, look at some movement tech. This level's got really cool movement. Um, Discuss, how time is actually being saved in a lot of these scenarios and the strats that are used by runners to, do so to script fights, to, maximize your ability to clear overworld encounters. Um, Being that this is the first level in the game, combat's not going to be all that challenging as far as, needing to do a ton of damage. But the main objective of all runs in this game is to minimize the number of staggers that are being caused to bosses. Bosses have these things called HP gates, which is a limitation on how much damage you can do to them before a phase transition or a forced attack or something like that. So, even if you could burst a boss down, even if you could stagger them immediately, you're going to sit here and have to wait through, a 20-30 second stagger where you can't do any damage at all just for them to get back up. Um, Both the main bosses here, Fafnir and Midnight Raven, have stagger or HP gates. Um, Fafnir's is around 40% where he's going to use spin cycle. However, Fafnir is relatively uncommon in that his HP gate, even though he's supposed to use spin cycle, all that actually has to happen is that his AI has to decide to use spin cycle. It doesn't actually need to do it. So you'll see when we do this fight what I mean by that. And then for Midnight Raven, he's actually got 2 HP gates. So right around 50%, he has the phase transition that introduces the mashing mechanic, which of course, since it's Final Fantasy mode, um, doesn't have a tutorial prompt, unlike story mode would have. And then he has another one at around 10% HP that leads to the end of the fight. Because, the fight is another cutscene, which means that you cannot kill Midnight Raven outright. You have to he has to be not staggered at around 10% HP in order to actually win the fight. If you stagger him at 11% HP, you're sitting through that whole stagger. You won't be able to do damage enough to kill him. And even if you could take him to 0% HP, it doesn't matter because of that gate. And then just as a quick explanation, Gold Chalice refers to when you beat the game the first time and you save your completed file, you get a little Silver Chalice icon next to it, which allows you to unlock Final Fantasy mode. Clearing Final Fantasy mode for the first time changes that icon to a Gold Chalice, which means that we get to start the game at max level with all abilities, all equipment, including the New Game Plus unique equipment, which would be, all the weapons that have more than 410 attack power, all the upgraded accessories, asterisk, there are some upgraded accessories in the base game, but these are like upgraded skill accessories, the upgraded Genji glove, which is important. And then, of course, this is with the DLC. The DLC brings perhaps the most important accessory to the game, which is the revivement bit. The revivement bit has 2 functions, one of which doesn't really matter for the vast majority of the Gold Chalice speedrun, which is that if you are going to die and you have any limit break available, like at least one section of a bar, it will automatically limit break you. You cannot die during limit break. That is not specific to the revivement bit. And then it also, much more importantly, increases the limit break effect from 10% of all your stats increase to 25%. And then also, obviously, we use Original Sin, strongest weapon in the game. It's got 750 attack power. Clive is level 110. So we've got 1050 attack power, which is the most you can get in the game. And we run the Genji Glove and the Genji Glove +1. The Genji Glove gives 5% attack. The Genji Glove +1 gives 10% attack. These are additive to each other, so you get 15% attack, whereas the scaling with, say, Limit Break is multiplicative, right? So the Genji Glove will give you, the dual Genjis gives you 15% more damage. The Revivement Bit gives you 15% more damage in Limit Break, bringing it up to 25% damage in Limit Break. And then those two multiply together. You don't get 40% more damage. You get a little bit closer to 50%. And that's the main way that we actually stack damage in this game, is when you talk about stagger multipliers, parry multipliers, you know, your strength tonic, which gives you 10% more attack. That is multiplicative with the Genji gloves and with the revivement bit. We use all of that to just make damage numbers as large as possible, as fast as possible. And then on top of that, because this is stage replay, we start every stage with a full stack of potions, which doesn't really matter. But most importantly, a full stack of 4 strength tonics, which means we've got 4 to use in Final Fantasy mode because we've done the quest that increase their duration. They last for 72 seconds. And then we have 2 Lionheart tonics. Lionheart tonics fill up your limit break over time. This is also very important for every single gold chalice individual level, because, well, every stage replay level, of course, because obviously we get 25% more damage in limit break. We definitely want to use that. And then in limit break, it is so much easier to parry things. It's kind of stupid how easy it is to parry things, but that's enough preamble. Start the run. So timing does start when you hit OK on that screen. Obviously, we're going to skip cutscenes. In the run itself, you can actually, like a full game run, you can save and quit right here to skip this talking scene. Can't do that in stage replay, so we do have to go through this. However, this leads us into our first little movement section. This one, courtesy of Dorius, using Cold Snap to gain height, using Odin's Arm of Darkness in order to move horizontally really quickly. That is like one of the fastest ways to move horizontally. You can use Lunge with Rift Slip to cancel out of the end of the lunge animation. I'm going to bring this back right here and temporarily mute this. So yeah, you can see the Cold Snap into the Arm of Darkness, you know, Lunge, Rift Slip, Cold Snap again. Right here, unfortunately, I don't have a very good camera angle of it, but there's a little ledge right around here. And there's actually an invisible wall until you get to a certain distance from it. And what that really means, it's really strange the way it works, but basically if you cold snap too early and then go into your Arm of Darkness attack, you will run into a wall up there and go nowhere. So that is bizarrely precise. And then we're going to come back into this first little fight right here, which I'm going to turn this there, but I'm going to turn the recording audio on it a bit up so that it's not as loud for me and I can think, but it is not overbearing on my voice, but you can still hear it. So this first encounter is a 2-part encounter. We have a set of wolves we have to kill, and then there's going to be a reinforcement. And the reinforcement mechanics in this game are actually something to discuss. But for this first set of wolves, we're going to come down here. We're going to pop Abyssal Tear to get it charging, wait for all the enemies to spawn, and then just use Cross-Swell to kill them the moment they become vulnerable. You could see back here, when they first come in, their HP bars are gray. They don't take damage here. So this is effectively manually timing a cross swell so that the moment all of these enemies are fully spawned, they die. And then I flip the camera around. So the reinforcement mechanic in this game, it's Final Fantasy. It loves to be very cinematic. So what it's going to try and do is spawn the enemies so that you don't see them spawn. What that means is that when we know this is going to happen, we can manipulate where they spawn pretty well. You don't have total control by positioning your camera before the spawn trigger occurs. So right here, by flipping this around, what would normally happen here, and what's happened if you've played this game, is all the enemies will spawn on the other side, like next to the ledge you just came down. You're gonna have to walk all the way back there, kill them there, and then turn around and go all the way back to the exit. But by doing this, we can spawn them in quicker and spawn them in next to us. The quicker part's probably not true. So you'll see I wait, and then I turn around, and here's the field. You've got 4 wolves, and you've got this Minotaur. The Minotaur is a mini-boss. He's got a decent amount of HP. We can't kill him with one attack. We have to use multiple. And this is also why we prepared the Abyssal tier ahead of time, because the charging time on it is exactly the amount of time we need to pop it right before the first wave spawns, kill the first wave, and then damage the Minotaur enough so that it'll die to Abyssal tier, or if you hit it perfectly, you can outright kill it with wind up. But see here, we do proselytize into a limit break. So proselytize has a screen slowing animation that plays when you hit, and there's a little effect that comes across the bottom of the screen, and then a white little arcing flash that does a lot of damage. Not all attacks work like this, but proselytize does. If you limit break after that ground tear opens, the attack actually continues going. Whereas, if you were to limit break during something like wind up, it would just stop the wind up entirely. So we do proselytize that guy just to get a bunch of damage on him and to put him into a half stagger. When enemies are half staggered, I call it stunned. So that's the word I'm going to use. When they're stunned, they take 5% extra damage. And that 5% damage actually matters. So then after this limit break, we're going to come in with a level 2 windup. Level 2 specifically because it animates slightly faster. Level 3 would outright kill here, but we still have to use the Abyssal tier afterwards. So why bother using the slightly longer level 3 animation when we can do that? We can go into Abyssal tier, and we can come out of it with everything dead. And then you saw right after there, you do the lunge into a rift slip. You come up to this, there's a cutscene you want to skip. You come into this next area. This next area looks very simple, surprisingly complicated, and there's actually RNG involved. RNG in your action game, if you would believe it. So we're going to do another little jump here, and that's the RNG right there. So that enemy is not guaranteed to spawn there, but also the order in which enemies spawn is not guaranteed either, at least as far as I'm aware. So what can happen right there, and you can see that 830 attempt count there. I played this level a lot. I've probably played the Greatwood more than anyone else in the world, honestly. But what could happen is you come down and you hit Phoenix Shift, which is, generally speaking, your quickest way to gap close on enemies. And you go to whoever's closest. Even if the enemy's off screen, the game will sometimes target it with Phoenix Shift. And so even if you do everything quote unquote perfectly here, you do have to deal with that RNG, so this is actually a big reset point. Now, it's important to note that only matters if you actually want like the world record, right? Um, if you want to, you can lose 3 seconds or 2 seconds just doing a little bit of different movement that doesn't rely on monster spawns. But of course, the goal for this run was to get it under 5 minutes and 30 seconds. As far as I am aware, this run is effectively perfect, right? Like, there's obviously a sliver of time you can save. You know, it's a 3D game. Perfect movement is not possible. You know, this is not like an old school game where you don't actually run in 360 degrees. You know, every tilt of the analog stick, every slight deviation in your camera angle does have effects, unfortunately. But, you know, I am 99.99% confident getting under 520 is out of the question. And if I had to guess, a perfect time would be around 525. Whether or not that's feasible is a different thing entirely, because there is, even in a 5.5 minute level, this game has a lot of randomness to throw at you. But to clear this room, we're going to use Flames of Rebirth. So we use it, and we immediately rift slip out of that. We can only do that because we intentionally have level 1 Flames of Rebirth here. So even though level 2 is obviously much more powerful and it builds a lot more limit gauge, which is nice, but we don't need it here. You can see my limit's going to fill right back up. Level 2 has 2 waves of fire attacks, and you have to wait until the second wave to rift slip out, because not every attack in this game is actually allowed to kill enemies. This is probably something you've noticed playing the game. If you use wind up on a normal enemy, you'll see you'll grab them and you'll drag them with you through the whole animation. So I've done a little bit of modding work in this game, and mostly around helping, decipher what a lot of these tables mean for the game's data, so that other modders can, take that and, run with it, make actual mods instead of what I do. But there is a set of flags in the database for this game for every single attack. And by every attack, I don't mean like, oh, wind up is attack. I mean like the first hit of wind up is one attack, the looping hit of wind up level 3 is a second attack, and then the final hit is a third attack. Only that final hit is allowed to kill enemies. It's the same case for Flames of Rebirth, and for most attacks in the game. Proselytize doesn't work that way. There are a few others that don't work that way, like Dominion, mostly the DLC skills. But Giga Flare would be like the base game skill that's most obvious. So all that to say, even though level 1 Flames of Rebirth is weaker, at this point in the game, it doesn't matter. We just need to pop it the one time right here to clear this room, because there's a lot of enemies in here, and there's a lot of airborne enemies. So, doing this and slipping out of it immediately is the fastest way to clear this room. And then I'm going to go back just a smidge. And you'll see after I slip out of it, I immediately do a cold snap to move on the ground. When you're not in combat, you can do that really quickly. This game has a very annoying feature where when you're not in combat, a lot of your movement abilities have really long delays after them, because I guess they don't want you to speedrun the game. But in combat, you can chain cold snaps very effectively. There is a cadence to it, because there is like the second little dash you do that like pops Clive up and creates the little crystal. You don't want to do that because that's not very fast. At least in this instance, you don't want to do that. There is application and movement to that second part of Cold Snap. But here we just want to use the regular Cold Snap. It's also important to note that you can't enter a door for I cannot go through this screen transition under 2 conditions. Number 1, enemies still being alive, of course. But number 2, Rift Slip's cooldown. So interactables, for the most part, if you are in Rift Slip, they just don't let you interact with them. Um, so that's why, instead of coming all the way to the door and using Flames of Rebirth, we just get pretty close because the time, it doesn't make a difference in time. I'm hitting this door basically on the first frame I can. But yeah, so we'll go through that. And then right here, there's a little cutscene we have to wait out with Sid going under here, and we're going to try and jam ourselves in here. And we do our first loadout switch. So loadouts were added into the game well after release. I don't know exactly when, but I want to say close to the first DLC, honestly. You're allowed to have 5 loadouts. They only apply to your skills. They don't apply to accessories. I know Square Enix is never going to watch this, but hey, if you're watching the Square Enix, please put accessories in loadouts. It would be really cool. Regardless, we have a mini boss coming up, which is why the loadout is getting changed. And the reason I do it in this little tunnel right here, probably obvious, but it's just so that I don't have to consider any movement options while I'm going through this. I don't have to worry about like the moment my menu closes, I have to do, a lunge into a Rift Slip or something like that. I just want to do that, not worry about it. And then on top of that, for all of these runs that I will eventually get through, you wouldn't do this in a full game run, but my icon order is always set so that when I change presets, when I change my loadout, I am on the icon I need to be on. So that should come out right here. You can see I lunge and I had Rift Slip on this icon loadout. And then I need to go into a cold snap as well. This cold snap elevates me. You can't see it in that camera angle, but there's actually another invisible vertical wall there. So, even though, of course, I want to come straight into this Arm of Darkness attack, I have to wait until I clear that wall. So that's actually was a really annoying reset point as well. And then we're getting into the first mini boss of this run. It's just a little wyvern. He's just a little baby. And we're going to kill him out quickly. So right here, you're going to learn something. So you notice he's staggered. And it didn't play the animation of him staggering. You will see that animation later if you're not as familiar with this game. But with the help of some other speedrunners, shout out to Dorius and Angel Kai, I think were the main ones that helped me with this. But there was this sort of property people would refer to as diamond dust critting, which is when, diamond dust is a stagger move. It doesn't do a whole lot of damage. You can see even on this level 44 enemy, a level 110 Clive, I barely did half. Right? I didn't even do half. For some reason, I'm going to posit why. I think I understand what's going on here. But if you limit break during Diamond Dust at the right time, it continues to hit enemies during your limit break. I believe what is occurring is that Diamond Dust is a screen freeze. Limit break, it slows time down a little bit, but it doesn't actually stop time. So what I believe is occurring is that the diamond dust crystals come out, and then you use limit break, and basically those crystals continue to tick on enemies every frame, and the rest of the wave does continue to spawn as well. It won't spawn the second wave if you've got max level diamond dust or level 2 diamond dust. It doesn't need to be mastered. But that causes it to just continuously hit the enemy and do like the kind of damage you saw here. Because that's about as much damage as a wind up level 3 would do, maybe slightly more. And Diamond Dust does not do as much damage as wind up. So this is actually like a big tech. This is the only place it comes into play in this. Actually, no, it comes into play once more in a way cooler fashion. The Diamond Dust cancels are kind of fickle. They slightly change depending on how large your target is and even what it is. You know, a curl is a very large quadruped, but they're like less susceptible to diamond dust canceling than like a chimera is. I don't even think they're called chimeras in the game, but you know what I mean by chimera. So there is like a lot of nuance to how these diamond dusts are actually lined up when they're canceled with limit break to maximize their damage. But yeah, we do the diamond dust cancel there. We do wind up and we walk towards the enemy, finish them off with a charge shot. Technically speaking, it is possible to kill outright there. If the diamond dust connected slightly better, if the wind up connected slightly better, you could kill it in just the wind up, but that's very unreliable, and it also does not make much of a difference anyways. I don't even think it makes a single second worth of difference, because the moment you let go of the charge shot, it, you know, dies immediately, right? So in a lot of places where damage is very tight, you'll either hold on to charge shot. If you only need a little bit of damage, if you need a little bit more, you'll hold Burning Blade, which is the charged regular attack, which is slightly more powerful than charge shot. But that gets us through the first mini boss. After this, we're coming into another small movement section and another mini boss. Final Fantasy mode remixes all of the dungeons in the game, like the sort of main stages, to have new enemy layouts. So where we're coming up here, if you've only played this game on story or action mode, you're going to see entirely new enemies here. Yeah, that's the first instance of Phoenix dashing specifically for movement outside of combat. Jumping and Phoenix dashing does not have the same annoying delay that a lot of movement options do. However, if you collide with the ground, there is a very long, very annoying recovery animation that plays. We're going to come through here. I've already changed my loadout, and so I'm going to pop Abyssal Tear here, Diamond Dust for some distance, and then use Arm of Darkness to close that. Figuring this fight out was actually really complicated. I'm going to mute it for now. So you can see this flan spawned, and for a long time, the way I think mostly Dorius was running against me in this. He has the PlayStation 5 world record. They're not directly comparable because the PS5 load times are different from PC, and PC has the load remover since it uses live split, and someone, I think it was Del Cake, was nice enough to make an auto splitter for us. Shout outs to him. But I think his best run was 545. He may have done one better. It's been a long time. However, you know, when we were first doing this stage, getting it under 6 minutes was kind of the first big barrier. Because the run when I started was like 7 minutes and change. And I was like, I can kill that. But I was like, you know, maybe 6 minutes would be like a really good mark. As you can see, that turned out not to be true, which is kind of the same mistake I've made on like every single stage in this game. There's only been 1 or 2 times where I'm like, I think this is the limit. And it turned out that actually was like the limit. But yeah, we're gonna, you know, use Cross Swell to kill those wolves there. We've already popped the Abyssal Tear, and to kill this flan, we're gonna use a few attacks, but this is also a reinforcement battle. So we do also need to manipulate the camera. So, two things there. Number one, that dodge is necessary. Go back just a little bit. So, if you're not familiar with this game or you're not familiar with the DLC specifically, watch this event level right here. You can see it climbs up slowly. I close the distance and I dodge and I instantly get about 65%. I need level 3 Abyssal Tier for this section, which is why that's done. It also, even as a timing thing, the enemies that are about to spawn based off the wolves dying and the flan spawning, not based off killing the flan. So it doesn't matter that I'm stalling a little bit here. But you'll see here, turn that back on, use proselytize, use wind up level 2, and then I'm going to use Abyssal Tier level 3, slip out of it, and go through this doorway as quickly as possible, and change loadouts there. I am coming up on the first sort of like actual boss. I'm not sure that move is actually the best way to do that. It looks cool, but I think right here what you'd want to do is maybe just actually, I'm not sure. Maybe that can be improved slightly, but I got 529. Unless a strategy is discovered that could bring this stage down under 520, I am Gucci on this stage. I am good. That's a lot of attempts. I've had enough Greatwood. So we're going to come into Fafnir now. So this is a real mini boss, and as I said earlier, he does have an HP gate, which is a sort of barrier that we can't bring him below until something happens. His is slightly unique compared to other enemies where they have like a hard sort of, this move has to come out before you can continue doing damage. His AI just needs to decide that the move's going to happen. This is actually like it mostly occurs with early game bosses. I'm assuming later in development they figured out, how to like put hard gates in to make sure that their cool attacks actually showed. Or, maybe it's the opposite, where originally there was always a hard gate, but game development, they always say the last thing you should do is come back to the beginning of the game and polish, right? You're like your first levels, you only get one first impression. So maybe they came back and kind of spruced up the beginning, and they're like, hey, in story mode, in action mode, on their first playthrough, they're going to see this attack, right? Like, there's no way you can do enough damage not to see it. At least I'm pretty confident there isn't. But for New Game Plus, for stage replay, like, just let them, if they could figure it out, just let them kill the guy. All right, so into the fight.
This shouldn't take too.
Use proselytize, limit break, cancel. We're going to put out a level 3 Ice Age. That move used to really suck. It got buffed, and it's actually quite good now. It's got an extremely low cooldown, one of the lowest in the game at like 17 seconds or something like that. Proselytize has an extremely low cooldown at 18 seconds. And then like your starting ability, Rising Flame, has a 20-second cooldown. And Ice Age is stronger than that by like a considerable margin. So, you do have to charge it, which is like a thing, right? So that does take a little bit of time, of course, but it does two things. It does a lot of damage, of course, but it also freezes enemies. So this choice, even though Ice Age, you'd rather use something like Wind Up, right? But of course, Fafnir's a big body, so hitting him with the full connective Ice Age is simple. Ice Age travels a set distance, so targeting an enemy doesn't matter. Right? It's going to go where it goes. It's going to blow up where it blows up. That's just how Ice Age works. But because he's a big body, we hit him with a lot of the ground icicles, and we hit him with the big icicle, and it freezes him, and that gives us a little bit of time so that we can pop out a lightning rod. And the reason we wanted to freeze him is for him to actually come down and hit that lightning rod. So the way lightning rod works is every time you hit it, it does a decent chunk of damage. It does like is it 6 times the normal attack's worth of damage. It's pretty powerful. I might have my numbers mixed up there. Don't quote me. But if an enemy attacks it, it does a lot more damage. A lot more damage. And there are a few places in the game where you can really abuse that. A lot of enemies, you're only going to get them to hit it like once or twice. Um, but that does line up his stagger gauge to a very important level. And because we can also hit the lightning rod, it lines up the big attack we're about to throw out, but we need to get his health a little bit lower. So we're going to throw out this thunderstorm and then start Giga Flare. Giga Flare does 60 hits, I think. It'll tell you at the end here how many hits I managed to land with Giga Flare. But it does a lot of hits. It's a very powerful move, but it does take a long time to come out. So generally speaking, if you can avoid using Giga Flare, you want to avoid using it because it full on takes like 18 seconds. But we're going to Giga Flare the Lightning Rod to both get the Giga Flare damage and the Lightning Rod damage. Fafnir takes headshot damage, which is why some of these numbers are different sizes. This is the Lightning Rod, I'm pretty certain, the 2025. Sorry, I'm on the wrong screen. I'm pretty certain this is the Lightning Rod pop. This 1524 is Giga Flare hitting Fafnir's body, and the 1879 is Giga Flare hitting Fafnir's head. So we're going to let that run out. His HP gate occurs right around here. Now, normally, if you stagger him right here, this would get locked. But Fafnir's not actually, because he's a mini boss, he's not actually like in hit stun or anything right now. He recovered from the stun. So his AI can actively make choices. And it makes the choice right here like, oh, I need to go into spin cycle. However, because of the way that this one works specifically, because he's made that decision, HP gate's gone. We can kill him now. And so all of those attacks, even though you might think, oh, why don't you start with the big attack to, recover your cooldowns or something like that? And while in a lot of cases that is a very smart thing to do, this fight's not that long, so we're sequencing these attacks in a very specific manner to actually bring cooldowns back. That's also why we are using Giga Flare here, is to create that really long delay. I assure you I'm not being unprofessional. I just need to double check something. So Fafnir has 350,000 HP, 346,000 if you want to be pedantic, which is a lot of HP. Xantetskin level 5 does about 100,000 damage, and that's the strongest attack in the game, aside from some special connections you can make with Diamond Dust, but those are few and far between, and they're very fickle. So there is actually a considerable amount of health to chew through here. And not using Giga Flare is simply not on the table for this fight. You really do need that damage. So this strategy, I have to thank Dorius for. This is not something I thought of. If you ever watch a story mode speed run of this level, specifically in stage replay, so they're level 60, they can just use Xantetskin level 5 right at the beginning of this fight, and it just kills them outright, right? Like, it just, the way the damage is divided up just so perfectly lines up. It's very strange too, because Zan does screen freeze, but I'm assuming because, like, even though it's frozen, like his Fafnir's little dinosaur brain is still running. He's a worm, to be fair, but it's still going. So it does just allow you to blow through that HP gate. Final Fantasy mode, we have to be a lot more particular with how we do that. So we get the stagger. You notice there I had to move my Giga Flare. This game has what I'm going to consider a very annoying property. When you stagger enemies, they move to a preset location in the arena. And this is every enemy that can be staggered has this property, which is very annoying when you get into double boss rooms, but we're not there yet. That'll be Phoenix Gate. So, I mean, there is an earlier double boss, but it is the final boss, and there are special stipulations in that fight that mean it doesn't really matter. But Fafnir teleported, and the game is nice enough to reorient you, but the lightning rod stayed where it was. So you have to swing back around to hit the lightning rod again. And so you can see here, it was in front of him. Now it's to his right. And you can see, yeah, 60 hits on Giga Flare. Thankfully, I was right. I don't recall how many hits Lightning Rod has, but it has quite a few. Now, of course, we did not hit Lightning Rod with every single hit of Giga Flare due to that teleportation and having to adjust the Giga Flare to aim at the Lightning Rod. However, it's good enough. And so this is going to bring him down. Now, this is not... In a perfect world, if there was a way to do it reliably, you would set the lightning rod up in a way so that when Fafnir staggers, he staggers and the lightning rod is still touching where the camera is going to push you. And so that way you're still getting headshots on Fafnir and you don't miss the lightning rod a single time. Now, it doesn't really matter too much because the long cast time of lightning rod, all of our cooldowns are ticking. We can still hit the lightning rod. So we go into proselytize, and that's enough to kill him. Sometimes you have to throw... Actually, no, I did. So you can see proselytize, and then I rift slip out, and then I throw out... Let me move this real quick. You can see right there he has very little HP. So he has just a pixel of HP, so I just tap Ice Age. I don't charge it at all. This comes out obscenely quick, right? It's faster than attacking, like regular attacking. It's better than that. So that's kind of the sort of magic of this fight, is all of these things come together to make this fight work out so that you can stagger skip him in Final Fantasy mode with very precise damage calculations and sequencing of attacks. Him hitting the lightning rod is actually a big part of that. We do need him to hit the lightning rod to hit these thresholds. And then I believe it is possible, you know, depending on where you wind up in 3D space, for you to be hitting the lightning rod automatically out of the stagger, and then on top of that to get more headshots with Giga Flare. I believe you can actually just kill with the proselytize there, but because I can rift slip out of it, and proselytize is an attack that can kill on any hit, so it doesn't matter. So I'm pretty sure, like, you could still see the effect on the ground here. So I don't think I actually lost any time here. In fact, it's probably always faster to just slip out and pop that Ice Age level 1 as fast as possible. So get through this fight. It's going to be a long video for a 5-minute level. Skip through this. We need to go through this tiny little crack here, so we're going to do a little Phoenix shift. We're going to get in there. We are going to change our loadouts once again. Now we have the coolest movement section of the stage. And Dorius and I do this differently. I invented some whack stuff that you're going to see. I'm just going to have to let you watch it. So when we get through here, I'm going to use Ultima. So this guy, added in the second DLC, his iconic feat, you summon his wings and you can attack with them. But most importantly, his lunge is a dot, or like his Yeah, his lunge goes forward very far. It's quite fast. It's not the fastest way to move forward, but it is very fast. And so we do that lunge, we do a rift slip, we do another lunge, and then we jump cancel it. And this is what makes Ultima movement so tantalizing. There are problems with it. However, because we can jump cancel it, that means even when we're not in combat, we can actually get out of this movement option way faster than any other that is like grounded, right? Like you can jump and do Phoenix Shift here, but you've got to jump, you've got to use your Phoenix Shift, you've got to land, you got to jump, you got to do it again, you got to land, blah, 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 right? Whereas here, I can do this and jump up, and you can see we're coming up on a ledge here. So you can do one lunge in the air, and you can jump cancel that lunge and gain more height. And that's what makes this work. Normally you would walk up to this and you would do a little climbing animation. It doesn't take very long, but it is slower than just not doing it. First use of ignition. Ignition is a very powerful attack. It takes a long time to come out, which is kind of the reason you don't see it a ton in Gold Chalice. But it provides a lot of forward momentum. You move very fast during ignition. And that's the one mistake in the run. You're supposed to cancel ignition. So if you want to come here and beat my time and save 1 second-ish, cancel your ignition there. So you don't play this slash attack. You do have to manually time it though. We're going to pull out Ultima again. This little hop is a setup I'm doing. And then we are going to hop again, and we're going to start air dodging. So if you are familiar with this stage, you know that normally you actually slide down this ramp right here. And then there's a bunch of enemies you have to kill. And then you walk up sort of right here, and there's a side path, and you go all the way around. However, there is a shortcut, an intended shortcut in this game. If you kill this mob, there is another ledge you can jump up and skip going around the side path and fighting the additional encounter there. But I don't want to fight either encounter because I want to save time. So what I'm going to do is what I just did. We are going to skip entirely this entire combat encounter and skip climbing up. You can't climb when you're in combat, but there is no invisible wall there preventing you from crossing that barrier. So this little strategy here is one I came up with. It is it's pretty hard to pull off. There is a limit to how long you're allowed to be in the air before you start descending automatically. And when I play this, you'll see this is a sizable gap. But Ultima can do dodges in the air that have a lot of forward momentum. And unlike every other iconic feat in the game, you can chain these up to 5 in a row. But even 5 in a row with a lunge, not nearly far enough to make it to the far edge. So we're going to use another mechanic, which is that rift slip can reset your air actions. It doesn't reset your like total air time. And on top of that, Ultima has a float mechanic. So there is, separate from like your ability to stay in the air, there is a mechanic on Ultima itself that determines how long you're allowed to float. If you jump with Ultima and you just hold the jump button, you will literally float. You get like 5 seconds, right? So this is still a very tight piece of movement, because the moment your float ends, you fall like a sack of bricks. There's no forward momentum at all. You stop in place and fall straight down. It sucks. You don't ever want that to happen. So we're going to do some dodges, and then we're going to do a lunge and rift slip it. And that's going to reset our aerial action counter so that we can dodge more. And I'm going to dodge around this little bend here. This is actually kind of hard to do. And you'll see here, I actually have run out of my airtime. I am falling, even though I still have Ultima Float. That's why the skip is so hard, is because if you're just a little bit further away, you actually don't make this jump. The fact that you can make this jump to begin with is actually kind of like a miracle. Um, Let me rewind just a little bit. So, what may not be obvious if you don't know how this game works, if there is an enemy on screen you can target, Clive will target it. So, even though I want my lunge to go straight forward, these raptors down here do spawn in. You can see right there. So, when I do this lunge, you can see just a little bit right here. Let's actually take this back. Let's slow this down. So we do these dodges, and then right here, you'll see that Clive actually autocorrects, and I have to manually correct him back. You can see he turns just a little bit to face that enemy, and I have to wrench him back into going the direction I want him to go. So he did auto target, but you can, like, the moment the auto target's done, you can control your direction again. So then we're gonna, go back through this. We're gonna do this whole jump. And now we have some RNG. These little boxes right here. These boxes are very important. Rewind just a little bit. So you can see right here, this is a big box, and these are tiny boxes. Now, this box being big means that an enemy is, I'm going to say, in range of me. When enemies are in range of you, that's when Clive will automatically home in on them with anything. If you are out of their range, the box becomes a little bitty box. I'm assuming Sid or Torgal hit this enemy. I obviously didn't do anything. But all of these boxes, right? All of these indicators, I have to pay attention to while I'm doing this weird curve and unable to rotate my camera because my hands can't do that many things at once. Because, I'm mashing R1 to do the dodges. I'm holding X to keep the float. I have to manually move Clive with the left stick. I'm doing a lot. And then, of course, when I need to rift slip, I need to hold R2 while holding X and then hit square. There is a little bit of time I have there where I can let go of X because I'm in the middle of a lunge. But, I need to be floating immediately out of that rift slip because I will not make this gap otherwise. You can see right there, the depth perception is a little weird, but this is actually literally the best I've ever done this skip. So I actually cleared it decently well. And you can see here that the enemy distance from me is small. So what that means is I can use lunge without being homed in on an enemy. And lunge is super fast. It is way faster to move with lunge than Ultima movement, than, ignition. It's faster than Phoenix shifting, unless you're gap closing to an enemy, but that's specific. So the fact that I'm in combat but far away enough from the enemies that I cannot auto target them means that in this section I can spam lunge and close a lot of distance to get to, it is called Chimera, cool, to get to this Chimera. And then you see there I shift to gap close a little bit faster. This is the second Diamond Dust cancel of this stage. It's the last one. And this is the hardest one to pull off that I have found in the game thus far. So my current runs are, we got Greatwood, Caer Norvent, the King's Fall, Phoenix Gate, Drake's Head. I feel like I'm missing one, and Costness. Costness doesn't have any movement at all. The fact that it's a stage is a little bit insulting, honestly. But all of those other stages have a place in them where I do a Diamond Dust cancel, but this one is the most technical. So unlike with the Wyvern, you see I'm actually like manually adjusting my positioning there. Let me see if this is actually reasonably visible. Nope, a little bit further. So I'm going to slow this down. This pile of sticks right here. This is a very well placed pile of sticks, because this pile of sticks is what makes this lineup possible. It is exactly where you need to stand. So you see, I back up onto it, and that's the visual cue to use Diamond Dust. I don't know if the spawn locations are random here, but what you might notice is I have this big box here. That's the mini boss. And then there's another one over here. There are 2 regular enemies that spawn with this guy. And speedrun. You want them dead as fast as possible. This confounds me. I do not understand why this works, because these enemies are too far away. However, you Diamond Dust cancel at the right time, and they both die. You can see there it actually did 44,000 damage. I've seen this as high as 60,000, just to put into perspective how fickle Diamond Dust canceling can be. But that's like my favorite move. That's my favorite combat piece in this section, because normally you had to, kill the Chimera and then kill the other 2 guys. They were very annoying. They have a lot of HP. They're like the Chocobo class enemy. They're not called Chocobos. I'm pretty sure this specific one isn't. But those enemies don't flinch when you hit them. They also have a lot of HP. And that makes them very annoying, because it means attacks like Wind Up, which rely on like grabbing and vortexing the enemy in, they can just slide out of, because you don't flinch them. So we do that, cancel the limit break, lunge in here, and we use Ignition for this last little bit of movement. And now we're getting into the boss fight here. So Midnight Raven, first stage boss of the game. He's not the first actual boss. You have the fight against, in the beginning of the game, the Phoenix Gate stuff that you don't have to play again on Final Fantasy mode. There's like the Morble fight there, and there's one of the Dragoons. They all have names like Knight of the Blank, so Knight of the whatever, that you fight at Phoenix Gate. I have not played that section of the game in probably 2 years. Actually, I know when the last time I played it. It was when the game came out on PC, because I played a little bit and then realized I could just download a save file. My full game record runs that I've done thus far, they're all on PS5, and then I transitioned to PC to make it a little bit easier. So in this fight, the only thing we have to kill is Midnight Raven, which is this guy up here. He doesn't have a very girthy HP bar. I'm going to pull myself down just a little bit. But, like I said earlier, he has 2 HP gates. So we do not want to stagger this guy. And we found a pretty magical setup. So I'm going to lunge in, limit break immediately. I'm going to wait for him. We're going to get this parry. When you parry an enemy, you do 25% additional HP damage and 50% additional will or stagger damage, whatever you want to call it. Now that's a double-edged sword, because the will damage multiplier is higher than the HP damage multiplier, which means that, like I literally just said, we need to avoid staggering this dude, and now I'm making him take more stagger damage. So we do this parry into a Rising Flame, and you can see that already did a lot of stagger damage. And his HP gate for the phase transition is right at this notch, actually. This is the 50% stagger gauge notch. So it's right there. I don't think the actual total stagger amount in this fight matters, but just to illustrate the point, we are nowhere near phase transitioning him, and we don't want to hit this half stagger. Half stagger has a special property where, like I said earlier, you know, certain parts of an attack are allowed to kill. Same thing goes for stagger. Only certain parts of an attack are allowed to stagger enemies. And they're almost always the same. There are very few instances where they're not. Um, so, how could I possibly close this damage gap when, you know, I used like 70% of the first section of stagger to do the, you know, 18% of his health? Well, we're going to use Zan 5. Let me actually get to a slightly earlier frame. Right there. Okay. So you can see here, he's at this little half stagger thing. Now, these attacks that can stagger, which Zan is one of them, the last hit of Zantetskin does cause a stagger. You can see it's at that notch. And in fact, it does half stagger him. I went a little too far. However, I slightly lied. The last hit of Zan, you might assume, is the big hit that comes at the end, right? So let's mute this and slow it down. So you can see when this comes out, you got a hit here, you got a hit there, got hit, and then the big one, right? This one does all the damage. I mean, it does most of the damage. This last hit is not actually the last hit of Zan 5. There is a final hitbox that does no damage and 1 wheel damage. That is the box that would actually cause him to half stagger. But that comes out, you know, game cinematic, that comes out when Clive poses, right? Because you want the really cool anime scene with all the enemies splitting in half, and then he puts your sword away, and then everyone blows into pieces, right? And you could see he was doing it right there. I cancel my limit break, and I limit break again to bypass that part of the animation. Now, normally you would riff slip to do that, because when you cancel your limit break, you lose that entire bar. So you can see here, I've lost 2 bars of limit. Whereas you can see, like right here during the Zan, right? That last hit comes out. I cancel my limit, and I had just barely entered this second notch. And so canceling my limit break there actually got rid of that entire piece. And I believe it's technically possible to do this and still retain this second gauge. All that really matters here is that we still have 2 gauges of limit here. Now, instead of using riff slip, I did a limit break cancel. And the reason for that is, like I said earlier, for the diamond dust canceling, limit break doesn't fully stop time. It only slows it a little bit. It's a lot. It's very complicated how limit break works. But important to note that it does not fully freeze time. It does not fully freeze everything. Rift slip doesn't freeze time either, but it slows it down considerably, and it slows everything down. But you'll see as I come out of this, I'm actually interrupted in the limit break animation by him jumping up to transition me, to phase transition the fight. Coming to this little cutscene, but importantly, because of what I did there, he has not been half staggered yet, which means we have the opportunity to chew through his health tool about there and still have this little barrier right here. Now, every attack in the game does have a frame, or like a specific instance that does stagger. And you saw how much damage Rising Flame did, right? We're going to layer attacks here the best way possible so that the total stagger damage done is actually way less. Um, so another side effect, you see these guys are still here. Because that last invisible hit of Zan is what kills, these enemies are still alive. It doesn't really matter because you can end the fight even if they're alive. But what it does mean is that sometimes this will happen and you will do something and you will target one of these guys. So you have to be very explicit about targeting Midnight Raven as fast as possible. He is your default target, but if these bozos move at all, you are put into a very rough position because you could like turn around and just hit them, and that would be terrible. We're gonna get up here. I am going to lunge into a limit break cancel. So I didn't hit him with the lunge, which is why he didn't half stagger. We're going to use Thunderstorm. Now, Thunderstorm has a very long animation, and only the last hit can cause a stagger. So we use Thunderstorm because it does a lot of damage. It is one of the strongest attacks in the game outside of ultimates. It's almost the strongest wind-up 3, but not quite. It's like 2,200 total damage. It does more damage if you're in their face because you hit them while you're twirling the rod. But it does like, it has like 2,200 potency, which means it does about 22 times the regular attack's damage. Wind Up 3 has 2778, so it does 27 times a regular attack's worth of damage, 0.78. So we're going to do that. Rising Flame. And those time out just perfectly so that their hits that can cause the half stagger line up almost perfectly. So the only stagger damage I've done here is the last hit of Thunderstorm and the last hit of Rising Flame, which is why it only did this much when you saw, like, you know, there was the parry. But I guarantee you, a Thunderstorm into a Rising Flame will half stagger Midnight Raven. He has a very, very tiny stagger bar. And we're going to punch him. And you can see that actually gets really close. And this is almost perfectly the exact amount of health you need to get him to get him to transition to the end of the fight as early as possible. So, you know, this buffer of stagger here is not that big, right? If the full Thunderstorm had connected, he'd be staggered. If the full Rising Flame had connected, I think he'd be staggered. We don't have the parry bonus here, of course. But the fact that I get the little 5% damage buff from the half stagger and wind up, I'm still close enough to connect the full wind up because there is travel time and it is possible to miss the first hit. And some of the looping hits, I don't recall exactly how many hits wind up does, but there's something like 20 some looping hits in the middle there. But importantly, that 2778 wind up damage is split amongst a first hit that does 555% potency, so 5.55 times a regular attack, and then a ton of looping hits that do less than a single attack's worth of damage. And then the final hit does 5.55 times a regular attack's damage as well. So we absolutely need that first hit to connect, but it just so happens that we are in the exact range we want to be, right? That didn't happen with the Wyvern because the Diamond Dust reset his position and reset our position too, and we just weren't quite close enough. But it also wasn't worth, like, you know, lunging in or stepping forward or something. Because that charge shot comes out so quick, like, it was fine, right? You just hold wind up to level 3. You can move a little bit during wind up, so we just hold it to level 3 and walk forward. But that's the end of the fight. There is this last mashing section. If you run this game on PC, you are allowed to use turbo. So I do have a AutoHotkey script here that I just hold down a button and it mashes real quickly. This is the reason that, you know, aside from load times removed, This is like a big thing that makes a lot of PC stages faster, is that you can skip these mashing sections. And boom, 529.8. I got several runs that were very low 530s, like 531, 532. But in this stage, even in 5.5 minutes, there are so many reset points, right? You can screw up the first spawn manipulation with the camera, or that opening movement section is harder than it looks. You can screw up. You can see when I attacked the Minotaur, I immediately used proselytize. It's possible, just like with Midnight Raven, that you target the wrong thing and you just hit one of the wolves with it, right? All the wolves will spawn back there so long as you are positioned correctly. You do need to give them enough physical space to spawn. Otherwise, they will just spawn on the other side of the screen. But that is another thing I ran into, is that, I would try to whip my camera around and use proselytize and I'd hit the wrong thing. The order in which those enemies come out, the Minotaur and the 4 wolves, is random. You want the Minotaur to come out first, or as close to first as possible. The second screen is not as bad of a reset point if you're not trying to get your run absolutely perfect, but it's hard to screw up using Flames of Rebirth and rift slipping out of it. But because those enemies are still alive during that animation, if you try to lunge or something out of it, you might just auto target an enemy and go the wrong direction, or you're just going to stop short, right? That's why we use Cold Snap. It is actually possible. I've done it a few times, but it's so unreliable, and I don't think it's not even faster anyways. But there is an enemy that sometimes spawns like all the way back at that tree to change screens. And with proper target manipulation, you can teleport straight to him. Not from where you land. He's too far away for that. But you could go from the guy I teleported to the guy in the back. And then, of course, the Wyvern, there's that invisible wall you have to clear. And then the diamond does cancel. It used to be kind of hard for me to get them reliably, but I've got them down now. It is still possible to mess them up though. If you diamond dust or you limit break too late, it doesn't do it. It doesn't cause the massive damage ramping. And then, of course, you've got the flan area with the 4 wolves, the flan, and then the 3 little mandragoras that spawn. You have to manipulate those spawn places because they do spawn where you can't see. But if I can come back and specifically find where that was a little bit further than this, let's pump up this playback speed. So when I come down here, there is this obstruction right here. This tree and this little barrier right here. They can spawn behind that, and Abyssal Tear won't reach them. It'll collide with the tree. It's like an actual projectile. So you can lose your run right here. That wind up 2 is very cheeky. But if you're not close enough, you will just straight up whiff that. Of course, coming up to Fafnir, I laid out this fight. This is the most complicated fight in this area. There's a lot of places where you can screw this fight up. You can stagger him too quickly, and you are completely lost. You lose 20 seconds, if not more. And if you stagger him completely, it will start spin cycle. You could parry him out of spin cycle, but you still lose like 7 seconds as he's winding up before you're allowed to parry him. There is the movement section after this, which is, pretty complicated here. And I'm the only person that does it this way. But, all of these like turns, there is the ignition mistake here, unfortunately. So this run, I'm going to call this run perfect, but technically there is one little thing I could have done better. Um, Reliably done better. You know, there RNG is RNG. You know, random positioning stuff like that is not totally in your control. But like that one thing was in my power. I just tried to cancel it too late because you want to get as much distance as possible. If you cancel it too early and you try to immediately go into this lineup, you will hit this invisible wall and you will fall down and slide down the slope. Um, so, you know, letting it play out may have actually saved this run. It is entirely possible I would not have hit that skip. This skip, really cool, but also very challenging, right? You can see I'm already starting to fall. I cleared it by like 2 dodges, which is the best I've ever done. Normally you clear it by 1. Um, and then of course, you know, coming into this, wow, that skips a lot. This diamond dust cancel here. If you don't hit that correctly, you won't kill the enemies on the side. That is an immediate loss right there. The Midnight Raven fight is actually, it's not that hard. But of course, like you can limit break cancel your Zan too early because it's possible you could cancel it before that hit goes off. In which case you would not do nearly enough damage, right? Like I'm pretty sure this whole white section here is like the last hit of Zan, right? Zan does about 100,000 damage, and he's in parry, so that's like an extra 25% damage I'm doing to him. But that last hit, it's hard to read, but that either says 63,000 or 83,000, right? And the attack in a parry does 125,000 damage. So this is the lion's share of the attack. In fact, I actually know how much damage this does. It does 66% of the damage with Zan. Zan has a total attack potency of 6,119, I'm pretty certain. So it does 60 times the regular attack's worth of damage. And this last attack has a potency of 4,006. So 33% of Zan's damage is in this last hit. It is hard to cancel it too late. All right, you do have like a good 2 seconds to cancel it. All right, that window is not too bad. And then of course coming into the next section of this fight, wow, that skipped a lot. Oh no, I'm on crack. Yeah, coming into this last section of the fight, right, you do that lunge, you have to stop it short. If you don't, I made this mistake on another run that may have been 529. If you don't stop that short, there's 2 things that could go wrong. You stop too short and you whiff the rising flame. You don't stop short enough and you hit him with the lunge and you stagger him, and now you can no longer meet the damage without putting him into a full stagger. Right, you stun him, sorry. Parlance. So yeah, you can see like the lineup of those, and the fact that this is like possible with the way it's being done is so perfect, right? Like you could easily stagger skip this guy by, you know, doing Zan and then doing Dancing Steel into another Zan, right? By just parrying him both times. But of course, Dancing Steel, even though it does charge your entire Zan meter so long as you are using the Pull of Darkness +1, which will fully charge it on a single target, it takes a solid 20 seconds to go off, right? Like that's 20 seconds you're spending using Dancing Steel, which does virtually no damage, to get another Zan off. And this dude has such a tiny HP bar, right? Like he does not have much health, but he also doesn't have much stagger. In fact, I'm going to double check his health. Like, I mean, the video is basically over, but Midnight Raven has 333,000 HP. So he actually has less than Tiamat. Or, sorry, Fafnir. Tiamat's a different boss, who is not even a dragon to begin with. So yeah, he has a lot less, or he has a little bit less health than Fafnir. And then double checking again. Fafnir has 106,000 will for stagger damage, and he has 60,000. So close to half the will to stagger this guy, which is why you see that meter get chewed through so fast. This dude has a pathetic stagger meter. But yeah, all that working out, the wind up, leaving him kind of just shy, right? It doesn't look like it, but like I said, all the attacks stacking up on that half stagger, which prevents it, is really what allowed this all to come together like that. Um, but yeah, that is an explanation of like the third shortest run in this game, the third shortest stage. Costness is shorter. What's it called? King's Fall is shorter by about a minute. Costness is like literally less than a minute and 20 seconds. Um, I want to say Canver is. I don't think Canver is 5 minutes 30 seconds short. I want to say it's like 6 or 7 minutes. It's still a pretty short level. But yeah, like this, getting this down to a 5:29, like this was basically I cut like 2 minutes off the world record that was there when I decided. I was like, I'm gonna kill this, right? And I almost quit at like 6 flat, but you know, Dorius being there, actually running the stage against me and pushing me to be better. Thanks, homie. And then, all the other members of the speedrunning Discord, once the stage got to that 6 minute mark, like they were all paying attention when it was like, oh, 6.5 minutes, right? Like they're like, oh, yeah, that's cool. But once it got under 6 minutes, they're like, oh, no, this is actually something special. And, we had theory crafted like, oh, maybe you could cut off another 10 seconds, another 5 seconds or something like that. But, Dorius, the strategy used on Fafnir is a combination of him and I bouncing back and forth, taking this record from each other and figuring out faster ways to do that fight, and then incorporating their ways. I copied a fair bit of Dorius's movement in this stage. He's been playing this game a lot longer than I have. He's kind of like the new game plus goat. And so like a lot of his movement tech is stuff I adopted. The most popular category in this game is story, like regular new game story. You don't get she's your seventh icon of 8. I think I'm doing that correctly. She's the second to last one you get. You get Shiva, then you get Odin at the very end of the game. So all the movement tech that's being shown in every stage before Reverie, and even Reverie, you don't even have Odin for Reverie now. It doesn't matter because Reverie is like all vertical up, not down. So like Arm of Darkness doesn't help there. But like all this movement tech, is to me a big part, and thanks to him running this game. He does a lot of new game plus story runs. He has the world record in that, and he's got like a lot of individual level records in action mode, and a decent bit in Final Fantasy mode as well on PS5. So it's like he did a lot to make this run possible. His run is phenomenal as well. I think literally the only difference between his run and my run is that my skip over the up to the Chimera is just faster. The skip he does, he doesn't slide down the slope, but he has to go down there. He goes down there with ignition, and then he I'm gonna say runs over, but he uses movement tech to get over to the jump as fast as possible. And then he does like a cold snap into a rift slip, which gives just enough height to clear that. But of course, because he goes all the way down and then he has to go across the bottom and then jump back up, whereas I jump and then go straight across. My way is just faster. But Ultima movement is really weird to get used to because it's all manually timed, right? I mean, that aerial one is not manually timed. Like you're just using rift slip and dodges. But like grounded Ultima movement is manually timed when you're going to do your jump cancels. Even, you don't have to do a jump cancel on that airborne dodge or lunge, but even your airborne ones, you have to manually time your jump cancels. It's not as necessary to jump cancel the airborne one because it puts you into a slightly longer recovery animation. But I think when you account for like the jump animation you go through when you jump cancel it, like it sort of evens out. But yeah, that was a very overly long explanation of a 5.5 minute level. I'm hoping to do this for all of the stages, that I've already done and the ones that will be coming out. So I'll do Karen Orvent next. Karen Orvent does actually have like one major mistake by me. So that record is up for the taking by like 8-10 seconds if you want to try. But I will get to that one soon. Currently, I am working on getting Drake's Head under 20 minutes if it's possible. It's starting to seem like it is, but that level is rough. If you don't know them by name, that's the one where you fight Typhon. So the first time you control Ifrit for like real, right? Not the tutorial battle with Garuda. But if you enjoyed this, make sure you do all the YouTube social stuff like comment, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Share it with your homies. Tell them how cool this is. Would love to have more competition in all the categories in this game, even like the story category, does have active runners, but the world record's been sitting there for a moment. And I mean, Yutamoto's run is phenomenal. Like, don't get me wrong, but it ain't perfect. So, if you want to try it, it's there. But yeah, thanks for watching.